So welcome, we're here today to practice nonviolent communication, which falls under the first and second layers of the 8 layers of yoga. And we'll look at that just to begin here. So we're looking at the teacher training manual for the Santosha school, the 8 layers of practice, or Ashtanga yoga. And these 8 layers are best represented like the concentric Russian dolls, with the outer layers, yama and niyama, conduct toward others in the environment, and conduct towards myself, being really those most outer places where I am able to clean up my behavior and really create a sense of sanctity to my life. And these layers grow increasingly inward. Yama, niyama, asana, cleaning up my body temple through repetitive yoga posture, movement therapy, pranayama, energy explorations, pratyahara, disconnecting from the sense objects, and the also action-oriented use of the senses, or sense withdrawal, pratyahara is often called. Dharana, being able to hold at a single point in my nervous system. Dhyana, meditation. And samadhi, the full and total placement, or when I've been able to get to a place where I, the observer, what I'm doing, and that process all become one. So I, the doer, the process of doing, and even that action have all become one. So artists experience this when they're in the flow, musicians when they're in the groove, athletes when they're in the zone, dancers when they're in the groove, nature lovers when they're out in nature. When the mind gets to the state of absorption, there's no separation from the oneness. And this is the state where we each feel a natural sense of bliss, because there's no separation of me and other. So yoga is a process toward this union. And this description of the 8 layers, or ashtau angani, becomes ashtanga yoga. The 8 layers or rungs. We are here working on these outermost layers. Where do I meet others in the environment? And so I like showing this. In the further unfolding of the yama niyama, the yama, or those checks on my conduct toward the outer environment, toward other beings, the first one, ahimsa, means non-harming or non-violence. And that's what we're working on today, non-violence. And also satya, truth. And so we're working on a communication methodology that works on being in truth and being non-harming, both toward myself and toward others. So as we go through this class, we'll learn that not only are we working on non-harming and truth-telling, but also some of these internal processes of the niyama around keeping cleanliness or purity, and around purification practice, tapas or tapaha, having an ongoing process where I'm not resting on my laurels, but I'm ever gardening myself. I'm not just letting the garden get turned over to the weeds and the climate, but I'm always working on myself. All the while, fully aligning my attention with the Supreme Being within, or filling up with the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost, Ishvara Pranidhana. So these outer codes of conduct are really strongly influencing my ability to get deeper into my own nervous system and deeper into my own level of happiness and true bliss. So that is the context for the today class. And we're now looking at how to get back to the Zoom meeting. So how do I get back to the Zoom meeting? Okay.
There we go.
Very good. So we're now looking at the process of nonviolent communication. This is cnvc.org, the work of Marshall Rosenberg, and the book is Language of Life. And today we have a woman here, Shona, who is going to be exploring learning these tools of nonviolent communication. So welcome, Shona. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Can you briefly describe what's going on for you in your life that you would like some support with?
Sure. I'm in a current relationship, and I've noticed a pattern that I've had in past relationships as well that is going on right now, that I have difficulty speaking my truth, speaking what I feel, um, partly for fear of hurting the other person. I think a lot of it is fear of hurting the other person. And also, I just have difficulty figuring out how to say what I'm thinking and feeling. And then, so then little things build up until it becomes a bigger issue. So that is my question. It's how do I build a better communication style in my relationships?
So the nonviolent communication methodology has 4 basic steps. And we're going to look at the 4 basic steps. Right now, Shona has shared with us that she's in a relationship. And what kind of a relationship is this?
Personal romantic relationship.
So this is like a partner, a life partner?
Partner. Mm-hmm.
And it's, what do you call this person, like boyfriend or?
Sure, boyfriend. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you are in a relationship with boyfriend, and how long has it been again?
3 years.
Okay, so you've been in a relationship for 3 years, and you're experiencing some challenge in expressing yourself or what's happening for you and being truthful. And part of it is that you recognize you're afraid of hurting the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And how long have you noticed this pattern?
Well, it's been even before this relationship. I've noticed it in my other long-term relationships as well. So
Okay,
it's been a long time.
okay.
Mm-hmm. And probably in other types of relationships as well. Family, work, just difficulty expressing how I feel.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so there are 4 steps that we're going to look at today. The first one is I observe. And this is a neutral observation, not an evaluation. And the second is I feel. And this is a basic human feeling, not something someone did to me. And the third is I need, or I have a need for. And this is a basic universal human need, not a desire. And the fourth is I request. And this is not a demand. So no is an acceptable answer by the other. So these 4 steps, I observe, I feel, I need, and I request, these are the things we're going to be looking at today. Does that seem clear enough to start with?
Yes.
Now, the 4 basic steps can get you cleared up a little bit. An observation is something that's neutral. And so a neutral observation is something like, when you came home at 9 p.m. last night. An evaluation is when there's something mixed in there that is your commentary on it, like when you came home late last night. And sometimes even tone of voice represents an evaluation. Does that make sense? So an observation is something neutral, and it's not something that there can be disagreement on. And it's also something that keeps the tube between the two hearts open. And so I'm changing this a bit so that I can draw here. Excuse me, as I'm still pretty new at this technology. But here's Shona, and she is wearing a dress today, so we'll put that on. And Shona has a boyfriend, and he's going to be quite basic looking for today. And between their hearts is a tube. And that tube ideally stays open, meaning that there's open communication between the two hearts. Now, when Shona communicates, she's hoping to be able to share from her heart what's truly happening for her. And yet she has fear of it making him go away. Would that seem accurate, Shona?
Yeah.
So how to communicate in such a way that this doesn't happen? Well, to some extent, we can't fully control what happens for this other person. But what I can do is I can control how I myself communicate. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so if when you enter into any dialogue with your boyfriend, it's important that when you start by keeping the tube open. So if there's any challenge that you're having or something that you're looking to share with him, it's important that you not start it by already throwing a dart at him. Because if
Okay.
you throw a dart at him through this tube, then of course he's going to start to go away. And that's making a neutral observation rather than an evaluation. So the example I used is when you came home at 9 p.m., when you had said you would be home at 6 p.m. Does that make sense? When you said
Yeah.
you came home late last night, or even if you don't address it for several days, and then you're like, well, on Tuesday, you didn't even bother coming home until such and such a time. Those are evaluations, and you're starting the conversation in a way that's not going to keep this tube open. So
Okay.
find a way to start with a neutral observation. And then once you share something, in this case, for example, you might be addressing this greater pattern that you observe with him. And you'd be sharing to your boyfriend, with your boyfriend, you know, I noticed that I'm 3 years into a relationship with you and I'm still frequently um, lacking confidence to be honest with you or to speak clearly to you. That would be a pretty neutral observation, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
And then you express a basic human feeling. And a human feeling is not something that someone did to me. So you could say that I'm feeling uncomfortable, for example, is a feeling, but I feel intimidated is not a human feeling. That implies something that he's doing toward you. So
Okay.
if you share, I feel intimidated, then you're implying that he's doing something. You can
Mm.
say, I feel afraid, and that's more vulnerable, actually. And that's one of the basic teachings of NVC is that in vulnerability, there is power. Because I am coming from my heart, which is unlimited in power. Okay?
Okay.
So a basic human feeling, I feel sad, for example, that I'm 3 years into this relationship and still feel so uncomfortable, being honest or keeping the tube between our hearts open. And then a basic human need. Well, human need, there are many that I could think of here. You have a need for safety, you have a need for connection, for love, for warmth, for interdependence, for expansion of a sense of the two of you growing together. Do these seem relevant?
Mm-hmm.
And it can't be a desire, like a desire is something like, I wish you would change this about yourself. Or I wish you that a desire is like, you know, uh, um, wanting to, like some relationship challenge and like, we have to live in, whatever, Los Angeles in Malibu on the beach or something. That's a desire. That's not a universal human need. So part of this process is discovering basic human needs. How my needs get met, that's not really up to my partner or someone else that I'm in dialogue with. And this NVC technology is not just to like mediate conflict between you and another person, it's to help you, Shona, get clear on what your needs are. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
And where those needs get met isn't really up for you to determine. Now, ideally, things around like, um, love and even sexual expression, those are met through our primary relationship. And I think it's generally important for the sense of safety and the sense of trust that is where those needs are met. However, some needs, like the need for celebration or play, or even the need for emotional expression, that might not always get met, wholly through your partnership. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's real easy for us to try to put all of our unmet needs on our partners in life, or our job, or whatever, our coworkers, whomever we're around the most. These are the people where our rough edges are always rubbing up against each other. So this is where so often we're going to be processing our life and our unmet needs. And so we are looking to these people around us all the time. Making sense?
Yeah.
And then the last thing is a request. And if and when you have this process with your boyfriend where you practice sharing, the first request to make is, would you be willing to repeat back to me what you heard me say? And that's important. So the first request is, would you be willing to repeat what you heard me say in the words I use? Is a nice further clarification. And remember that they can say no, okay? But this way you two don't play tennis back and forth. So frequently there's this like, I express and then my partners, and so there's this back and forth thing that happens, and there's never this sense of a person sharing and it actually being heard or it landing with the other person. And so often I see this happening with couples, but in so many situations, we're in a world that struggles to have enough empathy. And so I myself have to learn to start by sharing or expressing in a way where empathy is even possible. Any questions about those 4 steps and clarifying them?
I don't think so. Not yet.
Okay. So we're focusing on the basics of nonviolent communication. We're working on Shona's life. Shona's been in a relationship for 3 years with a boyfriend. She's experiencing challenges expressing herself because she's afraid of it hurting his feelings. Am I with you? Is that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Would you be willing to share a bit more about what tends to happen or what you've noticed as you've tried sharing yourself over the last 3 years?
Sure. I think I try expressing what I feel, and sometimes it evokes a bit of insecurity, in him, or sometimes it evokes some anger or frustration, and then I start to shut down. I think emotions get involved. He gets angry, I get fearful of that anger, and then I lose my the sort of power to speak, in a sense. So that's kind of normally how it goes.
I am guessing that you are not the only person out there who has experienced this.
Okay.
I am guessing there are many listeners out there that have experienced something similar in life. And here's the incredible thing about the processes of yoga, Shona. Yoga allows me to experience life in an empowered position. Every person around me and all of the situations around me represent my past karma, and I've attracted them to me so that I can move forward in my own growth. So I'm not a victim of the circumstance. I'm not a victim of this current situation. As you yourself have noticed, you've had this pattern before. Have you had the same pattern with previous boyfriends?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like, can you mention like how many other boyfriends or other relationships would you say that this has happened?
Two other long-term relationships, where it's great in the beginning, and then the little things happen, but I don't express my feelings, and just kind of hope that it kind of plays out okay. And then the little things build up, and then little things become bigger things, and until they kind of bubble to the surface. And in the past, the relationships have ended. So this time I'm recognizing that pattern happening again, and I want to be able to learn how to communicate it better so that it doesn't end in all of that pain and suffering like it did in the past.
Okay. So I want to acknowledge you for being willing to explore this and explore it in an open setting like this. It's common that Americans in general, but many Westerners don't have enough cultural training in how to be in relationship with others. And we oftentimes get taught a very codependent version of love. Even our popular songs, with or without you, I can't live, with or without you. Whatever, there's so many versions of songs and movies that represent codependence. It's not you complete me. That's not finding a soulmate. We're wholes that need other wholes that are equally committed to spiritual life. And that's really requires me, myself, working on my own completeness and wholeness before I'm really ready. And it doesn't mean you need to be perfect before you can find a life partner. Not at all. It just means that you need to find someone that's equally committed to the process. Does that make sense? And that's what you're
Mm-hmm.
exploring right now.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the problems that arises for me is I get frustrated being with someone who's maybe not as committed to that process that you're talking about of self-growth.
Okay. Well, this is a fairly common dynamic, and not to be heterosexist, but in the heterosexual world between men and women, it's fairly common. In working in the yoga community, it's a common experience I have in either yoga or Ayurveda clients that I'm working with women who are interested in spirituality. They're interested in some further growth and work on themselves, and their partner, male partner, is not as committed. I'm here to tell you and share with you, though, Shona, it's just as common when I work with gay couples. It's just the nature of actually human beings relating to other human beings and sharing space. So when it comes to your home life and when it comes to that which is most central to you, Shona, You get to choose. And it's not essential that a life partner um, be into exactly the same things that I'm into, or exactly the same uh, practices that I'm into. But generally speaking, relationships will only last at the deepest level of the connection. So physical relationships will only last, for a physical level of depth. Energetic relationships are deeper, emotional relationships deeper, intellectual or life guiding philosophy deeper. Spiritually oriented relationships will last the longest because there's that commitment to the eternal together.
Mm.
And without getting further into a really long discussion, one of the challenges that people without a church or a temple or a committed religious path have is, what's my sense of community or my elders or my culture of young people through old people that are helping me figure all of this out? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important for people that don't have that to get clear on what your boundaries are around your life. It used to be that people would say, those who pray together stay together. And from a real practical standpoint, that's things like, whatever happens during the trials of household or life during the week, at least on Saturday or Sunday, I get together with those people. We sing together, we pray together, and we look each other in the eye and say, peace be with you, or, forgive me my trespasses as I forgive those who trespass against me. So there's this renewal process that happens. So outside of the context of NVC, one of the reflections that I can offer you is um, the need for a daily routine and a weekly routine where you and your partner are committed to this renewal and refreshing process of really getting the tube between you clear, being washed clean. Does that seem helpful?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have
Yeah.
any ideas on what you could do for that?
As a routine.
Daily or weekly routine? Both would be even better.
Okay. Well, we live right on the river. We could go for a walk on the path together. Um, maybe, well, it's helpful going to your meditation class every week. Um, or we could find a church somewhere maybe to go to together.
Okay. Well, as you explore this material, it's important that he's co-participatory. So what you're using NBC for, you're really identifying the underlying need, this need for connection, this need for honesty, this need for truth.
Mm-hmm.
Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so how that shows up, you don't get to universally choose. You don't get to say, hey, we're going to Pierre's meditation, or hey, we're going to come as a mediator for our conflicts or whatever. That's how you address these. It's important that you just identify the need and then be open to how it gets met.
Okay.
Say, here are some ideas I have. But the first thing that I'd recommend you do using NVC is actually, there are two things I'll recommend. So we'll look at the whiteboard again and clear it off. And what we're going to look at are, it's generally very difficult to start talking in NVC language with a partner or anyone that I'm around frequently, because I'll start to sound kind of weird and different to them. And they'll sense that something's kind of wacky. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So instead, what I recommend uh, is that um, the ways to first implement NVC gracefully, sorry about my typing, into personal or close relationships. And I think the ways to go about that, one is to find a separate person willing to role play that close person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Rather than you working with your boyfriend, practice with a friend who is willing to pretend that she or he is your boyfriend. And then second is to practice empathically listening to your boyfriend using NVC. And then later, then practice sharing with him using NVC. So it's important that before you go, and this is a really weighted topic, I mean, where are you at in your deliberations around this relationship with your boyfriend? I mean, in your heart, like what's happening around, what level of unmet needs and feelings are you having and behaviors that you're considering?
Um, let's see. Do you mean like emotionally or specific things that?
I mean, I guess like how upset are you? Like, have you thought about leaving the relationship like you did
Oh.
before?
Um, well, I thought that if things don't change, then yes, I would need to leave the relationship.
And so this is a really fairly drastic place to be in, compared with uh, having some technology to use to really get to the heart of what's happening for you two, right?
Right.
So I encourage you to uh, invest. If there are 5 layers, one is physical, 2 is the bioenergetic, 3 is the mind, emotions, relationships. This is the battlefield of karma. And then later on, the 4th one is the mind, intellect, life guiding philosophy. And the 5th is the spiritual body. So you're here working on the 3rd layer, the mind,
Mm-hmm.
emotions, relationships. And you could use a class that works at that layer. So
Mm-hmm.
in addition to NVC, there are other classes like 12-step meetings, Codependence Anonymous or Al-Anon, which is for people that have some history with an addict in their family. Or actually any 12-step meeting works. It's just a drop-in weekly class for the emotional body where people are practicing speaking truth. And to go back to the original description of yoga, you're right there at yama. Yama niyama asana pranayama pratyahara dharana dhyana samadhi. The yama are relationships out there. Niyama is relationship to self. Asana is my body. Pranayama are energy currents. Pratyahara is going within. Dharana is being able to hold awareness at a single point in the nervous system. Dhyana is watching a thread in my nervous system. And then samadhi is when I become absorbed. So you're right there working at these outer layers. You're working on 9 violence. And part of that is you have not been compassionate with yourself. By you holding things in and not being honest, this level of unhappiness and discomfort builds up. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And if you were to leave this relationship without knowing that you put your best effort into it, there would be I'm guessing, a sense of of pain and suffering and of like, why does this keep happening?
Mm-hmm.
So my
Yeah.
share with you is learn this technology of MVC, practice role playing with a friend who's also interested in learning it, practice listening to your boyfriend by clarifying as he's sharing. Like if he's angry, like you mentioned, he gets angry in the past, then
Mm-hmm.
that can be, that can, you mentioned that that can create a fear response for you. Well,
Mm-hmm.
take a second, let the fear be there, and then say, okay, I'm ready, I got it, you're angry. And then help try to ask a clarifying question rather than getting intimidated by his anger or getting upset that he's angry. Just say, okay, I hear that you're angry. What is it that you need? And in that way, you're actually helping his anger land somewhere rather than being this perpetual, ungrounded anger that doesn't have any resolution. Now,
Okay.
I want to be clear here. I am not advocating for you to set yourself up uh, forever in a relationship where you have to be the empathic listener and he is never willing to look at his own self-growth, or he's allowed to always be angry. That's not healthy.
Okay.
Right? That's not what I'm advocating. What I am advocating is that you learn to have enough self-confidence in your own self-worth that you're not so easily intimidated by what's happening for another person. So you can just hear it, help clarify it, and then sometime at a later time, not right then perhaps, but when you go on maybe that morning walk by the river, or maybe after meditation, or maybe you two can find a church type event once a week. At that time afterwards, you can share with him, hey, this is where I'm at in our relationship, and this is how I'm feeling, and these are really the underlying needs that I have. And first and foremost in that is some sense of mutuality to the process. And if he doesn't have a mutuality to the process, what I always share with people who are working in this depth in their life is that I know I'm in a relationship when I have someone who cares about how I feel and cares about what I need. If the other person that I'm around regularly doesn't care about how I feel and they don't care what my basic needs are, I have to ask, why am I still relating to that person? Okay?
Okay.
Well, it's been great being with you, Shona. We'll end with just a simple chant. You can respond to me.
Okay.
Om Gang
Om Gang
Ganapataye
Ganapatiye
Namaha.
Namaha.
Om Aim
Om Aim
Saraswatyay Namaha.
Saraswatyai Namaha.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Gam Gurave Namaha.
Om Gam Gurave Namaha.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you so much. This prayer, Ganapati, the Lord of the multitude, Ganesha. So I'm calling upon that aspect of myself and of the universe that removes my inner obstacles. Saraswati, she who has the tastiness, I'm calling upon that aspect of myself that is the most luminous, bringing the most beauty. Om Namah Shivaya, Shiva, the Holy Spirit, the transcendent, the first yogi. I'm calling upon that transcendent force that is throughout all and that opens the gateway to the eternal aspect of the self. And then Om Gam Gurave, the Guru. I'm calling upon the teacher, the one that I found, teachers I found here, the teacher within me, and the teachers throughout time. Then we chant Shanti 3 times. Peace here in the physical world that I can see. Peace in that astral bioenergetic world I can see. And peace to that causal world, the unseen. In this day and age where it's so easy to see polarity, peace does truly start by me resolving my own unexplored and unmet needs. When my needs are met, my feelings are positive. So I salute you, Shona, and thank you for being willing to share with all of us.
Thank
Namaste.
you. Namaste.